Hello everyone and welcome to Fictional Face-Off, the show where we take two of your favorite fictional characters, analyze their stats up and down the board, and see who will win in a fight to the finish. I'm your host, the Dishwasher, and today I'm joined by my brother from Catholic Harbor, Coco. Ahem, I said my brother, Coco. My brother, Coco.
What? Ah! My back! Don't say that back!
You okay?
No, I'm not okay. Did you not hear my spine crack on the cement floor back there?
Well, if you practiced, maybe you wouldn't have broken spine. Speaking of, yeah, that really did sound bad. You want me to replace it with a robotic spine?
No, I don't want you to replace it with a robotic spine. I don't want to be a cyborg, much less a ninja.
Why? It works well together. Just look at the contestants for today's episode. Genji, the robotic Ronin from Overwatch.
And Raiden. And Raiden from Metal Gear Rising. Boo! Weak sauce. Raiden is so destroying Genji.
We haven't even started this thing.
I don't need to start it. I know this stuff.
Since when?
You want to bet?
Sure. The usual?
Oh, yeah.
Fine. Then without further ado, let's get this thing going. On to the stats. In the future, 30 years from now, the world was in crisis. Advanced machines with powerful AI called Omnics began to revolt against their creators and threatened to bring chaos upon mankind.
I guess Ultron, Skynet, and Duolingo weren't enough, huh? Never learned with this stuff. But this time, instead of cowering in fear as the apocalypse approached, humanity fought back against the mechanical menace.
Under the orders of the United Nations, an elite task force was created, one to combat the Omnics before their threat grew too large. They were Overwatch. Comprised of the best soldiers, mercenaries, social oddities, and even friendly machines the world could offer, they were humanity's best hope and saving grace, each with their own unique flavor to bring to the fight.
Ooh, that one's a cowboy, and that one's an ice climber, and a roller skater, and a monk, and a hamster? Hamster? Really? Yeah, I guess you're right in saying that, it's just a whole ice cream parlor full of heroes.
Correct, and among all of them was our subject today, Genji Shimada. Born the youngest son of the famous Shimada ninja clan, Genji was as close to a modern-day prince as you could get.
Yeah, he was born into a lot of money. Maybe not ethically obtained, but still. Dude was loaded, and he had no qualms enjoying every penny of it.
This was not a sentiment shared by his older brother Hanzo, who believed Genji to be disrespecting his family name and wasting his talents.
Because despite acting like it, Genji's far from a spoiled brat hiding behind the Shimada name. He's a deadly ninja, skilled in martial arts, stealth, shuriken throwing, and he's also an expert swordsman. And
yet, he preferred the life of a playboy, opting to stay out of his family business even when his father met an untimely demise.
But this is where things got bad for the guy. See, Hanzo, now the head of the Shimada clan, doubled down on his threats for Genji to get serious, which he ignored as he always did. Big bro said no, little bro said let's go, and the whole thing turned out a little less bueno.
Left for dead by his older brother, it seemed Genji's story was to end there in a broken heap. However, fate had other ideas and sent a guardian angel to save him in the form of Dr. Angela Ziegler, aka Mercy of Overwatch.
Well, I mean, she looks the part, but in all seriousness, Angie was one of the world's best in the field of medical recovery and nanotech biology. I have no idea what that is. But anyway, it made her the perfect person for Genji's situation. She offered to fix his body $6 million man style, but it would come at a cost.
He would need to work with Overwatch, becoming one of its agents and helping them fight injustice. However, with what little options he had left, Genji accepted the offer and was healed and rebuilt with mechanics where the damage was too severe.
Which was unfortunately quite a lot.
Gone was the slacker playboy Genji Shimada. Now standing in his place was a powerful cyborg ninja.
And ooh boy, it did the trick and then some. While he was deadly combatant before, this new body turned Genji into a whole new animal.
Think of it like turning off your body's natural limits in a way. Genji was stronger, faster, and more agile than his training ever made him to be. He could move fast enough to deflect gunfire from a minigun, send a grown man flying back with a single kick, and can easily scale walls to the point he may as well turn off gravity.
Angie wasn't messing around when she did her work on him. Genji's literally strong enough to cut a car clean in half, chucked at him by Doomfist. Caught and returned Widowmaker sniper shots that could be going over 1,400 miles per second. And then brought down this large robot by doing the same thing. Only they weren't bullets. They were freaking plasma blasts!
Genji's even kept pace during sparring matches against one of Overwatch's other operatives, Lena Oxton, better known as Tracer, and considering she basically has control over her own personal time to move at hypersonic speeds and beyond, not much else needs to be said on how Genji doesn't waste a second during battle.
Duh, bro, he's a ninja! And no ninja will be caught dead without a trusty blade to do some slicing.
Wielding two cybernetically enhanced swords, a wakizashi and a katana, Genji can use both to maximum deadly effect. Along with deflecting bullets, as we said before, he's precise enough to split an arrow completely down the middle, slash through a robot in one slice, and even carved a jack-o'-lantern out of a pumpkin within the span of a single toss.
I respect Rika.
You should, because that much skill behind that much power made Genji basically a one-hit killer, striking targets fast and retreating before anyone could react, just as his training taught him to do.
Yep, but just in case it fails, the Cyborg Ninja isn't afraid to break out the big boy strapped to his back for some extra firepower.
Named the Ryu Ichimonji, or Dragon Blade, it's the pride of Genji's arsenal and the weapon he uses only when things are truly serious. However, when the sword is unsheathed, it's usually game over for whoever's on the other side.
Like when he slashed these hover cars aside like balloons or sliced through the hand of this giant robot in one go. Jeez, what's he got against robots? Doesn't he have one himself?
Yes, and it's complicated. See, while his robotics did enhance him to be a super ninja, it didn't kindly affect all the categories one might wish. Most notably, his durability.
Yeah, it might make him a little tougher than being just skin and bones, you know? But he's not invincible or really even bulletproof, hence the need to block them.
During his fight with Doomfist, while Genji was able to hold his own for a while, the stronger man eventually was able to put him down quite handily.
I don't get it.
What? His name is Doomfist, and he has a giant arm, and it's a giant arm, and handily, I forget it.
So, Genji's got a little bit of a glass cannon syndrome going on. He can deal the punishment, just not receive it.
Exactly, but that wasn't the worst of his problems regarding his new body. That would be dealing with the body itself. See, despite saving his life and improving his abilities, Genji viewed himself as less of a human, more like some kind of weird Frankenstein's monster.
That stinks. His mind might have been there, but to Genji, his soul was long gone. He was no different than the machines he was hired to destroy.
Feeling like more of an outcast than he had ever been before, Genji left Overwatch and went searching for guidance. Someone or something that would tell him what he was and where his place was in this new world. And ironically enough, he'd find just that in the form of Zenyatta, the Omnic Monk.
Despite being completely robotic, Zenyatta had more humanity in one circuit board than most people Genji knew. He helped guide the cyborg to realize his self-worth and to shatter the truth of his troubles. It's not what's outside that matters. Very original.
Cliche as it might have been, the Omnic's words were enough to bring Genji to his senses. He felt enlightened to himself and what he was, realizing that he is and always was Genji Shimada, and it rebirthed the dragon inside his soul. A
dragon that he can summon and harness during battle. Hey, maybe I should go hang out with some robo-monk so I can get one of those too.
No. This had nothing to do with that, but rather the latent mystic energy inside the Shimada family. It was just thanks to Zenyatta's training that Genji learned how to harness it into his ultimate attack, the Ryujin no Kino Kure. With this, he can materialize a projection of his spirit dragon that can rip through foes like they were wet paper, allowing Genji to land a devastating finisher once they were good and done.
Dang it. But not for Genji. With this new luck in his life, he found the strength to return to the world and his friends in Overwatch, who also just happened to need his help at the time. Funny how that works.
Well, it was all for the better. Overwatch was a step closer to being the glorious League of Justice it once was, and Genji was in no small part. He helped battle the returning evil Omnics, wrangled unstable insurgents in, and even played a key role in bringing down the illegal operations such as Talon and even the criminal organization of his own family.
He might also have moved on to be more than just the patron of mercy, if certain lines in the game were to be believed. Way to go, buddy. You deserve it.
It wasn't the only retribution he got. Genji eventually had a rematch with his brother Hanzo, where he told him in person that he forgave him for what he did so long ago.
And even though Hanzo might not have been at peace with it, Genji was, beyond with a shadow of a doubt. He'd grown to accept who he was and what he could be, achieving the potential his brother ironically chastised him for wasting years prior.
Thus is the story of Genji Shimada, Dragon of the South Wind and Warrior of Honor. Allow me to begin this one with a philosophical question. What makes a weapon effective? Its lethality, its versatility, its availability, or its adaptability? The answer is all of them, and none of them. For with the proper forging, tuning, and building, anything can be a deadly weapon, even a young boy whose only wish was to exist peacefully in the world of Metal Gear.
Yep, good luck with that. This is the story of Jack, or as he's better known to us, Raiden.
Born in Liberia during its terrible civil war, Jack didn't have the best starts to this grand adventure we call life. His parents were killed in the fighting, and the young boy was recruited as a child soldier in the army under George Sears, future president of the United States and secretly the third member of Les Enfants Terribles.
However, it wasn't all bad. Jack pulled his own weight, and George took a liking to that, eventually bringing Jack under his wing as something of a surrogate son. And together they would do such wholesome bonding activities like fishing, playing ball, and teaching Jack how to off a guy in 101 different ways. Such an awesome father figure George was, Dish.
George saw in Jack just as much of a tool to be used as a boy to be raised, something even more compounded by the fact that he was responsible for making him an orphan in the first place. Not exactly Father of the Year material.
Indeed. So eventually Jack noped out of there years later when the war ended, leaving Liberia and traveling to America to make his way. There he would redeem himself for his years of fighting by signing up for more fighting. This guy's not very bright, Dish, is he?
You gotta work with what you got, and in Jack's case, it was being one of the deadliest humans on the planet. Learning most skills by only the age of 10, Jack was an expert in the art of stealth, espionage, infiltration, and assassination. He's a master combatant both in armed and unarmed combat, and his mostly unassuming appearance made him quite underestimatable.
Yeah, before anyone starts on the he looks like a girl train, it's old news, okay? Let's move on to more productive things, people.
Jack felt very much the same way, wanting to put his talents to good use. Joining up with the legendary task force known as Foxhound, Jack aced their entire VR training catalog before being handpicked for a top secret mission.
Under the new codename Raiden, Jack was to break into the Big Shell offshore facility, rescue the new president James Johnson, and take down the notorious criminal Solid Snake.
No! That is not Solid Snake!
Yeah, fine. Solid as Snake. Sorry if I offended you, David. After this, there was a lot of mind-flaying stuff to say the least about AI. Childhood trauma, traitors left and right, whatever this is.
But I live on through this arm!
Some meta stuff about video game training people for war, what's real versus what's not, Jack's girlfriend, whose name is literally Rose, this ballet dancing vampire dude, and Metal Gear Solid 2. Why are you the way you are?
It's not as bad as it looks. When you boil it down, Raiden was being manipulated under layers and layers by Solids and the Patriots, who themselves were being manipulated by each other for Revolver Ocelot to manipulate them, and that he was being manipulated by Liquid Snake, but not really because, okay, maybe it is that bad.
Look, all you need to know is that in the end, Raiden stopped the flying boat Metal Gear, beat Solidus to avenge his parents, and then lived happily ever after with a pregnant Rose.
For about 2 weeks until the Patriots kidnapped and returned everything from his bottom jaw down into a robot.
Okay, but at least we can stop talking about the story.
Made to continue the project started with Frank Yeager, better known as Gray Fox. Raiden's cybernetic body took his physical attributes like speed, strength, agility, durability, and stamina and cranked everything up through the roof. Where before he might have been called an unstoppable killing machine, now Jack could back up the claim 100-fold.
Yeah, Metal Gear isn't really known for being realistic like some people think it is, but now Raiden was just spitting in the face of realism. He's strong enough to slice a stone wall in pieces, fast enough to run along walls and keep pace with the speeding train, could not only take multiple stab wounds, but shoot the knives he was stabbed with out like missiles. And he did this.
Stop that plane! Wide open!
So this is what happens when you take enough Hideos to beat Kojima.
Given that Metal Gear Ray units are estimated to be around 1,000 tons, it's safe to say Raiden's pretty jacked. Eh?
If you ever feel bad, remember that I'm related to this guy. But it's true, when it comes to making them tough, look no further than Raiden. He's been crushed under heavy chunks of rubble, thrown into a clock tower so hard he cratered it, can throw around these smaller Metal Gear units while doing Booker T Spinneroonie, and if you think throwing a ray was impressive, check out the time he held back this giant submarine battlecruiser called Outer Haven by himself.
Despite being heavily damaged prior, Jack literally brought the 100,000-ton ship to a near halt and even dented its front hull.
Not only that, but it's also carrying several rays itself, plus something that outweighs any Metal Gear ever created, Mount Snakemore.
Raiden's impossible strength would be terrifying by any weapon he chooses to use, but as sort of poetic reminder to the man he overcame to be free, Jack's main choice of weapon is the blade.
And let us tell you, the craziness ain't a stopping now. Because Metal Gear doesn't just have regular swords, but instead this crazy thing called the High Frequency Blade. It's just basically a lightsaber.
That's a completely oversimplification of the thing. You see, high frequency blades work by vibrating at such a powerful wavelength that literally destabilizes materials on contact. It's like an electric carving knife that moves so powerful it cuts things down to the molecular level, like Black Panther's claws or a flash hand, but I wouldn't go so far as the latter.
I think anyone who ever comes across Raiden can. He was capable of one-shotting armored guards when he first wielded one as a human, and after becoming a cyborg, they became less like people and more like a soft butter replicas of people. Yeah, I really don't know how you could stop a guy like Raiden. I mean, you'd have to... Ah, yes. I guess that there is a way.
Yep, despite being incredibly powerful, Raiden's far from invincible. His body can still be damaged with bullets, lasers can still burn through his armor, and if he's fighting someone else with a high-frequency blade, he's just as vulnerable.
But Dish, that was Chatstream Giga Sam! See how far they had to go to beat him?
He's also been critically injured by falling rubble, to the point he can hardly stand.
Well, there went my argument. Or does it?
Yes, after failing to stop Sam and the rest of Desperado, Raiden underwent a total upgrade of his already ludicrously powerful body. In this new body, he could hold his own against more advanced cyborgs, crush giant boulders as a result of clashing his blades in a sword fight, survive being shot down from a skyline altitude helicopter, blown up with several powerful explosives, and when it came down to speed, there's something extra special lying in wait for those he's fighting.
By harnessing his inner Weebo, Raiden can enter a state called Zendatsu, in which his perception of time slows down and allows him to make several lightning-fast precision cuts. How fast, you might ask? Oh, just a little quickly enough that raindrops stop moving while he does hundreds of them.
But yet, all this power came at a cost. Killing and killing while waging war after war began to wear at Jack's psyche, and with a combination of his growing angst, fatigue of combat, and maybe hearing one too many lines like,
Means the DNA of the soul.
something snapped. The cool and collected mask Jack wore shattered, revealing his sinister side Solidus created years ago. This was no longer Raiden, but instead, Jack the Ripper. A form in which Raiden begins to relish the primal feeling of fighting, killing, and destroying with no restraint.
Basically his Super Saiyan mode, where if you're in his way, that won't be for long. It allowed him to overcome and destroy Desperado and finally put an end to Jetstream Sam, who gifted him the ultimate high-frequency blade, the Murasama.
In the game, maybe, but aside from the mag launcher sheath, I'm not sure it's any more powerful than his prior blade.
It's red, Dish. That makes it better. Plus, without it, he'd never been able to defeat Senator Armstrong and his nanomachine, son!
Well, yes, the Senator and his tech are impressive.
Just impressive? Bro, this guy played college ball, and not just some cushy Ivy League, the University of freaking Texas. He could have gone pro if he hadn't joined the Navy. Don't mess with this senator. He could break the president in two if he wanted to, with just his bare hands.
Do you even hear yourself?
It's Tuesday, okay?
That it is. But in the end, yes, Raiden managed to defeat Armstrong and end the continuing cycle of wars he'd been fighting in since childhood.
Or did he?
See, the one thing Jack, and probably Metal Gear as a whole, learned at this point was that war wasn't a party or a group that could be forever ended. It was a concept of human civilization that would always exist as long as there were those who stood with opposing beliefs.
Yep, you can shoot down or cut down as many Soliduses or Armstrongs as you want. There'll always be more to take their place. So Jack could enjoy his peace and freedom, but he'd have to fight for it if someone wanted to take it.
And that was just fine by him, because as he said, his sword was a tool of justice, but should you cross him wrong, beware, for in all reality, the Murasama isn't his sword.
On a cool night in Hanamura, Japan, the light of the moon fell over Castle Shimada as the midnight hour struck. All was quiet in the structure that was secretly base for a powerful empire of crime. One that was currently losing its power thanks to the actions of a warrior made of steel and his blade of death. All through the halls, security roamed to check every crevice for intruders. The men were all fairly competent and did their jobs commendably well. However, there are some things not even the sharpest eyes can find. Some things built beyond the capabilities of the human body. And unluckily for the men in the room further past the halls towards the data servers, they learned just how outmatched they really were.
Rose, I'm about finished here with the intel.
Raiden said as he finished downloading copies of the Shimada clan's entire database onto a portable drive.
But I still can't figure it out. What does the Laleluli Lo want with these guys?
It's rather interesting, Jack.
The woman on the other end replied.
But from what I can tell, 2 of the Shimada family members are employed with Overwatch and have proven to be extremely effective fighters. I assume that the Lalelulelo are looking to gather as much battle info on them as they can. Perhaps in hopes to duplicate them in body double cyborgs?
Well, that wouldn't be good.
Replied Raiden as he finished his job and unplugged the device.
Suppose that's why we need me to.
Suddenly, Raiden held the word mid-sentence as he sensed something from behind. It hardly registered on his Soliton radar, but it was enough to give him a spook. He turned around, hand gripped on his sword handle, only to find nothing.
What's going on?
Rose asked over the comms, noting the sudden stop in Raiden's words.
Jack, is everything okay?
Just fine, Rose.
Raiden replied, lowering his guard.
I'll have to call you back in a second.
And with that, Raiden hung up his call and jolted away for the door. He narrowly missed as a second being came hurtling down towards him and began to race him as he leapt from the hallway to the higher floors and eventually to the open-walled lobby of the next floor up. The Liberian cyborg stopped as he reached the center of the room and waited for his foe to follow and land opposite him a few paces away. He wasn't at all surprised to see who stood before him. Clad in white and silver as opposed to his jet black armor was another cyborg ninja, one that once called this place his home and apparently still believed the need to honor it.
Invader,
He said with a mechanical voice.
you are not welcome here.
Well, not much of a shock.
Raiden said with an impatient tone, hand on the Murasama.
But your family's made some dangerous new friends, and I can't let that go any further.
I shall deal with that myself.
Genji replied while drawing out his wakizashi.
But as for you, get out or die.
Raiden smiled as he drew his red-bladed sword to bear.
Let's dance!
Immediately, Genji leapt forth and slammed his blade against Raiden, who already anticipated with a hard parry. It sent the Overwatch agent spiraling back and hardly gave him a chance to breathe before Raiden followed up with a hard combo. The high-frequency blade moved fast in Raiden's hands, almost appearing like a crimson blur. Genji noted its uniqueness immediately, but couldn't quite place what made it so strange. His sensors were picking up what he almost thought was a hum from the sword, something he also felt as he clashed his wakizashi against it. It felt dangerous, more so than any other blade he'd ever faced, fitting since this man was pushing him to his absolute limits of speed and instinct. But Genji wasn't about to let himself become the weaker fighter in this contest, and with a throw of a smoke bomb, decided to take back the offensive position. Raiden cut through the smoke with a growl, but found it empty on the other side. He almost wondered aloud where the other cyborg ninja had gone before Genji revealed that with a powerful combo of flying kicks from his blind spot. Raiden turned around to counterattack, but only found himself too late before Genji struck again from another opening. This continued for several times before the Liberian cyborg had enough and sheathed his sword back inside the scabbard. He'd been practicing this technique for a while, rewatching his battles with Sam to get as much detail on how to use it. One might say he was pretty good. Raiden screamed as he pulled the trigger, launching the blade into his waiting hand. He used the momentum to spin himself in a circle and caught Genji completely off guard, sending him flying halfway across the room. The disgraced Shimada shook his head and recovered as fast as he could, both congratulating himself on guessing there was more to that sword than meets the eye, while also scolding himself for allowing that opening. It would not happen a second time, he promised, while standing up and readying his short sword. Only as he looked down at the weapon, he saw that it wouldn't be much help to him now, for all he held in his hand was a handle and a stump. The blade had been severed clean off.
Well, that's not good.
Genji said as he threw it aside and grabbed 6 shuriken to throw at the charging Raiden as he leapt backwards to avoid him.
Ha! What's wrong?
The other ninja roared as he sliced through the throwing stars like second instinct.
That blade hold all your bite?
Genji replied as he rolled aside and threw 5 more.
I'm just not a fan of those who don't play fair.
There's no such thing!
Raiden said as he slashed across the ground in an upwards cut, nearly slicing Genji's chin open.
There's only kill or be killed. The rules of nature.
Then I suppose it's time for this dragon to bear his fangs.
With that, Genji landed a little ways from Raiden again and drew forth the Ryu Ichimonji from his back. The sword had led him to many victories before, so it was time to do so yet again. Raiden saw him bring it out and bowed his own sword as a show of respect and indication he was ready for a true duel to begin. Genji leapt forth, katana swinging down at a diagonal slice that Raiden blocked and threw aside. But Genji was waiting for it, planning for it, and used the momentum of the slingshot to rebound back and get in close. He knocked Raiden's scabbard right off his body and took it out before delivering a fast and furious series of well-placed sword strikes. They began with one hand and slowly progressed into two, and Raiden followed suit until eventually the two clashed blades in a manner he'd once found himself in years ago with the previous owner of his sword.
You fight well,
Genji scolded as he pressed against Raiden, pushing him.
but you are also holding something back.
Oh no. Don't you dare start on that.
Raiden hissed as he began pressing back, easily overcoming Genji.
You wanna get nuts? Fine! Let's get nuts!
Without much warning, Jack shot his head forth through the space between their blades and cracked Genji with a devastating headbutt. His visor broke on impact, stunning the Japanese cyborg and leaving him unprepared for the onslaught of moves headed his way. Genji ducked, weaved, countered when possible, and just generally scrambled away from the deadly scarlet sword until he felt comfortable trying an offensive again. Once during the scramble, he got nicked by Raiden, and he wasn't sure whether to be taken more by the pain or the ease in which the blade moved through his armor. He needed a different option, one that didn't involve throwing himself in front of this hyperactive maniac. Genji went over everything he could think of as he created distance between himself and Raiden, throwing shuriken, smoke pellets, and anything he could think of to throw his opponent off balance. However, a solution was failing to come, and Genji felt a slightly bitter taste of hopelessness in his throat. What would the dragon do to defeat his foe? He wondered, and then it came to him. He didn't need to ask the dragon when it bent to his will. That was the answer, and Genji's path was clear. He knew how to end this. Landing a distance away, he turned to Raiden and threw a shuriken towards him to alert the Liberian cyborg to his presence. The other cyborg sliced it in two before rushing in to finish this skirmish once and for all. Little did he know what he was walking into. Genji saw Raiden run and relaxed himself. He calmed every part of his body and allowed another force to share his space in the universe. So too did his body reflect this, emanating a bright green aura to indicate the power he now wielded. The dragon had come to him, and as he took out his sword and fell into the traditional stance, it would lead him to victory. Genji screamed as he flew forth, sword commanding the ethereal beast to attack on his behest.
What in the name of...
Raiden roared as the emerald monster flowed over him, immobilizing him in place so that Genji could land the perfect...
White Devil,
Genji said solemnly as he pulled out his blade, watching Raiden fall back.
it's over. I have beaten you.
Maybe. You're right.
His foe coughed, spitting up blood as he talked.
You beat Raiden. But... I think...
Genji looked closer, his visor flickering from the damage. Something told him that this...
I think it's time for Jack to let her rip!
Genji gasped in shock as Raiden shot forth with even more strength than he had at the apex of the duel. He managed to move aside the Murasama, but Raiden was still atop him with a hand around his neck. He tried punching it, but his own strength would never beat Raiden's, so he was forced to survive in other ways.
Forgive me.
Genji said weakly as he stabbed a shuriken into the side of Jack's neck, freeing him for the moment and allowing the Shimada cyborg a chance to recover. He wasted no time slashing Raiden across the back and delivered a few powerful kicks while he was still reeling from the stab to gain distance. Unfortunately for him, he'd also returned Raiden to the place his scabbard had been lost prior, and the Liberian ninja retrieved it. Genji growled as he stood before Jack, the both of them tired, damaged, and knowing that this fight was going to be over soon. There was no other end, so a promise was made to hold nothing back. They charged forth. Blades bore in one hand while the other held something neither foe trusted. Genji went first, throwing down multiple smoke pellets to obscure the field of vision. Raiden countered by gripping his blade and unleashing a flurry of slices that cleared the skies. Only thing was, he only cleared them to get a view of Genji looming over him with his blade posed to strike. Jack snarled and sheathed his blade, pulling back for a final strike that Genji was confident he could outmaneuver. Both men readied themselves for the finish, Genji bringing his blade down and Raiden pulling the trigger to launch his sword. There was a hit, but neither one knew what happened until they landed. Raiden fell to his knees, a deep gash in his shoulder that nearly rendered his arm useless. It was a bad hit, but one Genji would never see. For after landing on his feet, the cyborg's visor went dark, and his helmeted head fell forth before tumbling across the ground as his body fell limp to the side. He'd gambled with fate, and he lost. Raiden chuckled at him, but not in ridicule. Rather, it was an expression of respect for the heck of a fight he just gave. For even though Genji lost, he definitely showed Jack a good time.
I like my chicken biscuits with a little extra chicken biscuits dish, just so you know.
Okay, fine. Let's look at this matchup first.
Okay. Let me guess. It was very interesting fight. Yeah, interesting that it was a total wash. I mean, this was just cruel, man. I don't think Genji even had a shadow of a chance.
Will you let me explain? Thank you. So like I was saying, this was indeed a very interesting matchup. Both men were exceptional warriors, but in all reality, this wasn't a fight Genji had too great of odds to win.
No kidding. You had a guy whose best feat was cutting off a robot's hand versus a dude who lifted a robot just as big, tore its sword arm off, had a duel with it, and then cut it apart at blinding speed. Raiden is just built different to such unfunny levels.
Agreed. However, Genji did have a few things in his corner. Given the time settings, there was an arguable chance his tech was superior, and combined with his lifelong ninja training, meant there was a chance he could have outmaneuvered Raiden, caught him off guard for a few precious hits.
But
he was unfortunately completely lacking in any way to put Raiden down. While his Dragon Blade was a formidable tool and Genji was a daft striker with it, it's highly doubtful he could have landed a powerful enough hit to kill him.
He survived being crushed by Outer Raven, clashed with Jetstream Sam, who can cut a Metal Gear Ray in half with one slice, and he's taken multiple blows from Senator Armstrong. Yeah, I know I got a little meme back there, but the guy's really no joke.
Indeed, he's strong enough to obliterate Metal Gear Excelsis and hit the ground so hard actual lava began to erupt from the earth. Even Genji's best offensive comes nowhere close to that kind of strength.
And that's assuming Raiden isn't keeping his guard fully up, because, well, Genji might be able to slip through for a few times. Jack's gonna wisen up eventually, and combining his insane, almost lightning speed reflexes with a sword like the Murasama doesn't bode well for Mercy's favorite patient. Sorry, Genji.
Genji might have been a formidable fighter and truly a masterful cyborg ninja, but Raiden just won the stat race by too great a difference.
Genji didn't make the cut, and Jack overwatched him, riding out in defeat.
The winner is Raiden.